questions. I'll just say them all at once, and then you guys can answer. First, you all touched on it, but I was going to direct this to Corinne for implementation with the cultural challenge. So I'm wondering what the challenges are that you faced with hierarchies within families. So soliciting input from women, are you ignoring the men or do you involve the men? And at the same time, have you had any specific communities where men are championing this cause in support of women? And then, is it a bigger cultural issue of domestic status beyond, you know, everything else? Is it enough to just say, here are these tools, that doesn't really change the underlying issue of the cultural status? And then my other question for George and for David is, with these clean cook stoves, where are these people expected to get access to the bricks? Or how does that work?
I'd like to follow Corinne, if
Sure.
you want to take it first.
Sure, and you might have more to add on this, just because the Alliance, just to be clear, is not directly implementing any projects. We work through all of our partners to implement projects. So I have anecdotal evidence to all of this, but a partner who's been working and bringing men and women in together might have more actual data on it. But I was the coordinator of the Alliance Working Group's Gender Committee, and we had a lot of discussions around what do we mean by a gendered approach. And it certainly does not mean only bringing in the women. Obviously, men in these communities have a very key role to play, just like women have a role to play. And there may be overlap in the roles that they have to play, but we understand there are very different roles. And so I was actually just in Bangladesh last week and was visiting a project, and they introduced me to the village spiritual leader. And it was a man, and the way that they were able to get that village to start thinking about cook stoves was by getting him to adopt the stove. So I think that there is a role for men to be playing as champions to support the needs of their household. And there are also men that are very impacted by this issue as well. In the area I visited in Bangladesh, I have to say that there were probably an equal number of men and women carting wood around. Now, the women were carrying it and the men were wheeling it on a bicycle, but they still were going out into the forest and collecting fuel. So I think that a truly gendered approach really brings in both genders and really figures out what are the roles for each of these people to play. So you probably have more specific experience.
I just want to add a few things. I mean, because in the water sector. Well, it's a mixed bag. But if you're in Bangladesh, I was in Bangladesh last year too, and we spoke to the women separately and to the men separately. But when we were speaking to the women, the men were standing behind.
Yeah.
And they were watching. And the funniest thing was, I was asking some questions to the women, and the men from FAO were answering for the women. And I said, wait a minute, I want to hear what they have to say. So, I mean, it's hard to get their responses out, but you know, I do think that if you in some countries you have to have the women in a separate place so you can talk to them, or the what do you call the extension agent has to talk to the women separately. But if the women come up with an answer, a solution, it may be better than the one that the men come up with, and sometimes the men will accept that one. In other countries like the Philippines, you know, it's really 50-50. The women are right up at the top with the men. They're all working together. And so that's a completely different situation. And in Thailand also, you've got the men and the women all working together. So, yeah, I'm sure you've experienced all the same things. In countries like China and India, I'm not sure. I think it's maybe more women-led or men-led.
My 2 cents worth once you're done.
I just wanted, the only other thing I wanted to say is that a lot of the programs before the 90s were women in development. So you had separate programs for women and separate programs for men. That, like our hand pumps project, that was focused on women, many of them. But then we came to gender and development, and it was supposed to be a balance between men and women. Well, sometimes you still need the Women in Development project alongside the gender mainstreaming, because the gender mainstreaming sometimes may not work.
Yeah, just to add on to what you said, like when you talk to the village leader, one of the things I found is that when you talk to the mother-in-law and make her understand that her daughter-in-law who's bearing her male heir or looking after the male heir, if you do this, it's better. So that was kind of the trick there. Then she stopped ill-treating her so much. And you know, when she was pregnant, not making her cook. So again, I guess it's saying whether your bottle is half full or half empty. So reaching out to the different people by telling them what the advantage is, as opposed to say, no, do this, so how is it going to benefit you and your lineage or something. That's what I have found when working with them has really helped.
And if I could just add one thing, I think the importance, the role that the Alliance would play in something like this is developing tools that practitioners can use to understand how to do a gender analysis before they do a project.
Right.
So not prescribing ahead of time, you should have women and men like this or that, but actually saying, you need to do a gender assessment, and here's how you do that. And then whatever the results are that you find, you design your program. So those are the kinds of things the Alliance is hoping to develop so that partners can easily tap into tools to start doing some of these best practices that we know exist in the sector.
Yeah, I just think it's interesting because it's definitely culturally relative.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And that needs to be applied.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I just want to add 2 cents
Sure.
from a young woman who was at the Seton Hall Graduate School, the John Whitehead School. And she had spent her summer with the Grameen Bank in Bangladesh, which is widely known for loans to women.
Right.
And she was interested in gender issues.
Yeah.
And what she noticed was all the people who run the Grameen Bank are men. And all the control of the loan money is by the male of the household. So she found that there was some progress needed, even in some of our stellar examples of empowerment of women.
I think Brock is better, maybe, in Bangladesh. Brock. Right?
They're a partner.
I think they get a lot of women
More of,
at the top.
Can I take a shot at the charcoal for the rocket stove?
Sure.
Boy, oh boy. This rocket stove burns charcoal, but it's not charcoal from trees. It's a very clever project that has gotten rights to collect the coconut husks from the beach. So a whole bunch of kids get employment collecting coconut husks on the beach. And then they get turned into charcoal,
And the distribution is...
which is then sold for a small price, but still it's economic activity for firing up these stoves. So it's using essentially organic waste.
Right.
Oh, sorry, David, did you want to?
Yes, I wanted to say something about gender differentiation in our relationships in Haiti, and you may certainly find that males are head of household, but there's quite a bit of interest in the problems of the country that come from men and women in high and low positions. Thinking of ministries, the cook stove issue has been discussed with the Ministry of Women's Affairs. Okay, you would understand that, but also with the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Commerce, because it's a matter of farming the land to produce the fuel that is going to be burned instead of the charcoal, and it's a matter of sales. The women are in the case of this rocket stove that we're talking about at the other end of the table. The head of the project locally is a man, but the person who's going to be using that stove and will be our expert, our respondent, is a woman who is selling hot food on the beach. And in the case of the ethanol stove pilot project, it's a woman and a man who head that program, and they deal with families and children, and children come in 2 sexes and lots of genders, and so it's a matter of dealing with a holistic situation.
But just to recap, so the accessibility of the fuel for both of these is widely available. Then it can be. Okay.
Catherine?
I have a question as a member of UNA. We're a grassroots organization. How do we, and our link is to civil society, how do we get our members and prospective members to hear this message and implement what you're doing? I'm in awe of your presentation, by the way, congratulations. But how do we do this, and what can civil society do to help as we spread our wings?
I didn't pay Catherine to ask that question. Step one is to get Matthias Resch to help you with the energy project. Step two is to have him send out an announcement to young professionals about and others of the opportunity to participate. He's got 20 folks who've responded, and we will be engaging people in both policy projects where they might put together a panel discussion, or they might do a piece for our blog, as well as fundraisers and actual on-the-ground implementation like we're talking about for the Cook Stoves project in Haiti. So, Matthias, do you want to say more?
And if I may, by all means, even though this is now termed the UNA SNY Energy Project, it's not just limited to issues of energy. It's such a broad field, and we've heard about 4 issue areas right here that all combine to something much larger, and there is way more, in fact. Deforestation was mentioned, environmental protection, ecology, sustainable development, health, gender, all these sorts of things. And so even though we are now looking at a cook stove and various models of cook stoves that we're hoping to gain momentum for rollout, community evaluation, and implementation, there's other issue areas that go hand in hand that are all being addressed simultaneously, ideally, that is, on a small scale with grassroots support on the ground, and hopefully to gain that momentum to then duplicate and adjust if necessary culturally, but then to duplicate and take that project and place it to the next community, and sort of begin a domino effect of.
Well, it would be good if we could get the UN Foundation to look at sort of aspects of rural development that include both energy and water. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that could be something to think about. Certainly, I feel that water is crucial to women, and if they don't have water, they're not going to have health, they're not going to have equality, and they're not going to have anything else. So, I mean, we might be able to generate some interest there.
Giorgio.
Well, dulcis in fundo. The Rotary is a big delivery system, and I love to glue people together, bring people together. And that's what I've done today. David Stillman, Ulrich Gaillard, Bra, private foundation. What I want to do, I want Ulrich to give David his business plan for a sugarcane cooperative in Dominican Republic, and for David to give you his business plan for the stoves.
That's right.
What I want to do, I want to generate profits for the foundation, for the cooperative. Doing what? Ethanol. They can sell ethanol, and they can burn the ethanol in the stove. The same thing maybe we should do in Haiti, to create a cooperative, put people at work so they can sell ethanol, the cooperative can be productive. So yes, we'll give them some money through a small loan, but they can produce money and they can give back the money for other community. This is my idea today.
Thank you.
Well, Brazil is using the sugarcane waste for gas for fuel, so that should be transferable.
Yes?
Yeah.
Well, since you've mentioned Brazil, let me pick up on that to say a couple